there's a bit of every artist in their work. So, we are going to get a little abstract. In the 19th century, Czech composer Bedřich Smetana wrote 6 symphonic poems. He called them Vlast, which means my homeland. One of the poems is called Vlatava. In German, and by extension English, we call it the Moldau. Whatever name you use, it's referring to a river that runs through Prague. It's an ancestral Czech river. It was culturally very important to Smetana. So he wrote a song about it. And if you listen to Vlatava, it has a very indescribable quality to it. You almost feel the river pulling you along, which is weird because it's music and not an aquatic current. So the song is provoking this emotional response from you. It does this, in my opinion, by employing certain indefinable or ineffable musical qualities. Smetana accomplished this by channeling his affection for a river. Of course, the river was a stand-in for so much more. And this is communicated through his work. You can just hear all of the cultural weight he felt as you listen. You see, truly great music often manages to capture ineffable musical ideas, and it exploits them for as long as possible. Finding a uniqueness and originality that catches the listener off guard just enough that they get transported. Well, that is the holy grail of music composition. To be clear, I don't think my skills are anywhere near that at the moment, but I'd like to keep working on it. So let's see how close I've gotten to abandoning the effable and replacing it with the ineffable. Good morning. I'm having tea and toast because it's Sunday morning. This needs a spoon. Drain the tea. Ooh, that's hot. The last time we left off last time with kind of coming out of this a build-up, a slight build-up, into like we kind of lost the rhythm a little bit. Not like lost the rhythm like it's out of time, but a piano is a rhythm instrument, and so now we're outside of the rhythm, and we have this nice break until, again, another moment breaks in and interrupts it. So what I did there is I amped up the dynamics at the front end, only to have it kind of like go up and then slowly flatten back out, because this is a transitionary moment till we get to our flute solo. And the flute solo is going to kind of invoke this melody that's going to follow our piano into another piano solo. This is very it's because I am a piano player. Like I understand music enough to be able to play other instruments on a keyboard, but generally speaking, I'm a piano player. So obviously I'm going to feature the piano a lot because it's the instrument I know the most about. But you have these flutes here, and then piano kind of takes it over, and the orchestra slightly comes back in. Now, we're kind of approaching a section of the song where I actually feel like it kind of loses its spot. It becomes ineffable in the wrong kind of way, meaning like you don't know really how to how to approach it. But I don't know if we're going to get to that section today, because really we're just going from the transitionary period after what we went over last week into the end of this piano section here, which is coming up. So it's a little more than about 2 minutes of the song. Again, it's not because I'm meaning to do this in 2-minute chunks, it's just kind of how it shook out. So you kind of hear it starting to swell up again. And then we have this trumpet solo, which we'll learn about next week. So let's go back through kind of where we were at, and we'll talk about it a little bit more. I'm trying to see like what things about the song are transportive, right? Because we talked in the beginning of this video, we talked about being ineffable, or being like trying to have moments where the song gives you an indescribable feeling or sensation, where you kind of like, even though it's just music, it's taking you to a place. This little section here, coming out of kind of the previous, so we have this kind of riser, and then the breath. Remember, this whole song is kind of a journey, and it's broken up into sections that honestly, I was talking with someone last week that has heard the whole thing. And honestly, like the kind of what they said was that, you know, there are sections in this song that could just be could be stretched out into entire pieces on their own. And I kind of had that feeling when I was writing it, but at the same time, that's a lot of work. So it wasn't something that's at like the forefront of my mind. I just wanted to get something written. So that's what this was. But it does feel like, when I start listening to it front to back, it does feel almost like a suite versus its own thing. And a suite would be like a bunch of orchestral pieces lumped into one song. Like, so you have a bunch of different motifs they're running back to back to back. That it's like almost like a medley. You get that more in movies than I think classical music, but it does happen in classical music too. Like, you know, regular old classical music. Boring old classical music. It's not boring. It's the best music. Here comes the Big Daddy. Here comes the Big Daddy. This is a little bit of conflict, and we're going to talk about conflict too, but that's in a different video. So there's a thing with music where you have 16, you can have 30-second notes, 16 notes, 8 notes, quarter notes, half notes, whole notes. And they give you a sense of urgency at a time. Like at certain points, it gives you a sense of urgency. So you have like, bah, bah, and you know it's a whole note. I'll give you a little bit of like basic music knowledge. So that's a whole note because it runs through the whole measure. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. But there's also a dynamic or a velocity to it, right? This whole note, even though it's one note held out, these are half notes, whole note. So did you hear the difference between those two whole notes? This one is very demanding. This one, not so demanding, but they're both whole notes. They're both substantial chunks in this section of the music. I think that needs to be fixed. It felt like it was almost like a 2/3 and a third note, which is not really a thing. You have this descending into what I feel like is a very unexpected part of the song, right? You just came out of this conflict and it kind of like settled down, and then you have a flute solo. A flute solo became a little bit of my jam. Speaking of jam, jam and toast. All right, let's listen to that flute again, eh? And we may just stop at the flute today. And I purposely kept the piano in this little beginning part. I purposely kept it light, kind of reacting to the flute versus providing a rhythm to it. But it is a piano and it is a rhythm instrument, or percussion, I should say. Is it percussion? You can Google it. I'm pretty sure it's like, even though it has strings, I feel like because you hit it, it's a percussion instrument. It has hammers. Like vibraphone, that's a percussion instrument. So I took the flute and put it into a piano melody. And then harmonized it with the orchestra in the background. So you have this moment of conflict that starts here. Timpanis in the background, like everything is telling you conflict is here. This is a deciding moment. If the song is a journey and the protagonist is the music, I don't know, whatever. Something was either overcome, or he was overcome, or she was overcome by something. There are a lot of vague ideas happening, and I specifically wrote this with like nothing really specific in mind. Just kind of feeling it out as I went along, and then as listening back to it, I'm like, oh, this feels like very much a journey of some kind. I call it the Mr. Tumnus section, and I'm not going to explain it, but you probably, if you know, you know. If you don't, it's fine. You can Google Mr. Tumnus. All right, so you kind of have the idea, da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. And this is a very kind of like basic thing, right? Where I just have the piano backed up by the symphony, but the symphony starts to build up again towards the end. Because again, a song is boring if it's not waving, right? If it's just a flat line, like I realize there's a genre of that where it's like ambient music that people listen to, and it's got very like lo-fi and all that, and that's great, and if you like that, that's awesome. I like some of that myself. But when you're talking about like symphonic music, it usually has to have, or needs to have, or should have some kind of like dynamic variance and velocity variance where you're up and you're down, and it's like emotional, and classical music is just dramatic. I feel like I haven't said a whole lot. And maybe that's on purpose. Maybe I'm trying to be indefinable. You don't know. But we've kind of talked about a little of what I've been attempting here. So what we'll do is we'll go from where we left off last week to where we're going to leave off this week. And I'll let you hear the whole section. And I'll drink some tea. Here we go! This is my mug. Feel the fullness come just at the last minute before I hit the... And remember I said last week, remember those hits at the beginning? I'm just messing around. I'm a piano player, I can't help it. That's not in the song. I liked the flute so much, I had him play the solo twice. And by him, I mean me, because I'm the only one doing this. This part here is probably the longest like continuous emotion or longest continuous section of the song. I don't know if it's like the marquee solo or whatever you'd call that, featured instrument, because the piano is literally just playing kind of variants of the same harmony and melody over and over again. And it has this switch at the end to kind of make room for a trumpet solo, which we'll talk about next week, but not this week. The trumpet solo is your thing to look forward to. This week we're just trying to figure out, can I stop being so dang affable?